G'day, and welcome to the Seacreatures Podcast, a show all about the amazing animals that live beneath the waves. Each episode, we chat about a specific sea creature with a guest who has spent time and interacted with this ocean animal. Our guests range from marine biologists to underwater photographers, citizen scientists, scuba divers, and anyone with an intense passion for marine life. My name's Matt Testoni, and I'm all of the above. And joining me for this episode of the Seacreatures Podcast is Ruben Vermeule, and we're going to be chatting all about the amazing world of lumpsuckers. Ruben is a scuba diver from the Netherlands in Europe and has had the lucky chance to go and see these amazing animals. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. Very excited to be here.
So, start us out with how you found out about lumpsuckers and why you kind of got a passion for them.
Right. So it's a very weird story. I was diving at a popular dive site in the Netherlands when I stumbled across a sticker when throwing trash away from dive center De Snotolf, which means lumpsucker in Dutch. So I looked them up and I thought they looked very funny. That winter I tried to search for them, found a few, and been hooked ever since. And I've been diving with them every year.
Cool. And before we talk about the actual diving with them, what is a lumpsucker? Because most of the audience on this show probably know a few different marine creatures. However, I reckon there's a good number who've never heard of a lumpsucker before. So talk us through what they look like and everything like that.
Right. So, it's definitely one of the weirder creatures, I reckon. Well, lumpsucker, the name says everything. Let's start with the lump part. It's a very weird looking fish. It's kind of like a ball, not streamlined at all, but very bad swimmers. And they don't have scales like most fish or some other fish have. They actually have tubercles, so these bony plates on their body. And they can have a variety of colors, from a blue-greenish to brown. And for the males, in the Netherlands at least in the winter, a bright orange. They have very thick lips, and they're one of the only scorpion fish I know of in the cold waters. Then for the sucker part, well, that's kind of their unique strength, Their pelvic fins are very weird looking, but they actually create a suction cup, so they can stick onto surfaces like rocks and sometimes buoys or something. So yeah, that's what a lumpsucker looks like.
Cool. I mean, so when you look up a photograph of them, they kind of look a little bit like a little doughy ball with eyes, because there's some cool photos where you can see the lumpsuckers sucked onto glass.
Yeah.
And it's got it's almost like some kind of alien mouth is beneath it that's, holding it onto the surface of different things, which is crazy. But how big do lumpsuckers get?
So it depends on which species you have. I know, for example, you have the Pacific spiny lumpsuckers. These are in Canada. You'll find them most. And they are 3 centimeters. And then you have the lumpus, so the common lumpsucker we have in the Netherlands, which can, there are some accounts of them being 60, 61 centimeters.
Whoa.
Half a meter that's on the big side.
And they're the ones you see when you go diving?
Yeah, and normally I see 30 to 40 centimeters in the breeding seasons.
Wow, cool. So it's a 40 centimeter fish with a massive suction cup beneath it. That's pretty weird. So yeah, I think giant dough ball with eyes and a big suction cup is a pretty apt description. But what's the species that you commonly dive with?
So I commonly dive with the Cyclopterus lumpus. So that's the common lumpsucker, the biggest species as well.
Cool. And so that's a seasonal fish for the Netherlands, isn't it?
Yeah, for us mostly it's a seasonal fish. These guys, they come from the north and from the deeper waters to the surface to breed. In the winters, you can find them. But we do see the tiny lumpsuckers, the babies, throughout the season, after kind of April, May, then they'll start to fade away as well. But you can see lumpsuckers in general almost all year round. In the summer, it gets a little bit weird. Sometimes you cannot find everything, but they hide very well. So
yeah, I mean, well, how big is a baby lumpsucker that's swimming around that you might find?
Well, in the beginning, you can find babies that are as big as your fingernail. Towards the end of the season, they'll get a little bit bigger. They're 4 or 5 centimeters. But yeah, they're not big at all.
And the little babies are using their little suction cup to suction under seagrass, or where do you find the babies?
Yeah, so we have a few seaweeds with very big leaves. We have a lot of current in the Netherlands, so you'll have these seaweeds just turned on one side, and they'll go to the underside and just suck onto the seagrass or onto any leaf of some sort. And you really have to turn over leaves sometimes to find them.
Cool. And So I'm imagining that that's for a tiny one, but for an animal that's like half a meter in size using a suction cup, they're definitely not on seaweeds, I'm guessing. Where do you find those ones?
In the Netherlands, we have some areas where we can find them pretty consistently in the seasons. For example, actually, we have a mussel agricultural area. So there are loads of buoys with ropes on them, with obviously host a lot of mussels. And they like to stick onto these buoys. And I've actually seen them like make nests on these buoys. But sometimes you just find one swimming around at random or just stuck onto a rock. When it's off season, they pretty much look like the rocks, so they don't need seaweed or anything. So they'll just like be stuck in place between loads of like oysters and mussels and hope you don't see them. Just like any scorpion fish you probably find on a coral reef.
Yeah, cool. And you just mentioned the word nests. Like, do they make like a nest of kinds, or what do you mean by like a lumpsucker nest?
Right. So they don't really like they don't get loads of materials and make a nest like birds would do. What they do is the males and females come together, they breed, then the female lays the eggs on a like area where they feel secure and safe. Especially like current is a big thing with lumpsuckers because they're very bad swimmers.
So she wants to lay the eggs in current, sorry, or she doesn't want current?
Normally they're kind of in between. A lot of the times they pick like dents in the rocks because there's still loads of water going over the eggs, but they don't want to be like crushed in the current. So they'll try and stick in these dents. So they don't really make a nest, but like the males guard the eggs in these dents or holes. It depends. Sometimes when they're really close to the surface, they just don't care and they'll put it everywhere because, well, on the surface you don't really have big problems with the currents. So it really depends.
Cool. And so the male then like looks after the eggs, doesn't he?
Yes. So the male and female, they come together and they breed. And after they lay the eggs, the male will guard the eggs and swing his fins around to get water to the eggs for up to 8 weeks. Like 6 to 8 weeks is normally how long it takes. So fresh salt water over the eggs by blowing it with their fins and even like blowing with their mouth sometimes. I've seen them do it. Although I think it's a little bit more tiring for the creature. So it normally just like sticks onto a rock next to the eggs. And then every like minute or so, he'll just get off the rock, like swim with his fins, get some fresh salt water over the eggs, and then stick back onto the rock.
Wow. And so you go diving with them and then you kind of just sit nearby and watch this male do this behavior. Is that like a common kind of sight you might hope to see?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's pretty consistent when you find these lumpsuckers in the winter that they'll have a nest or they'll at least try to find a mate. But most of the time when you find them, they're very shallow. So then they probably already have their nests because the females, I don't know what it is. I've never seen the females like come up very shallow. I've only seen them at like 20, 24 meters. And the nests are like, I've seen them on 2, maybe 1. So I think they breed like deeper than they actually create their nests. And I have to see research for it, but it's something I have not ever seen. Like it's very weird.
Yeah, I mean there's a pretty big lack of research about lumpsuckers, I think, which is, I mean, because they're not a commercial species apart from I think 1 or 2 little kind of fisheries. No one really knows too much.
I think they'll become a more commercial species after time.
Yeah. Is that because what are they harvested for at the moment?
So I know in Iceland, it's the male ones are a delicacy, but mostly what they're used for is like now with the dwindling supplies of like sturgeons and everything, they actually use lumpsucker eggs for like fake caviar instead of like sturgeon and sometimes catfish.
Yeah, okay.
So over time, you actually see them being caught more. It's very sad.
Yeah, but I guess watch out for the lumpsucker research that hopefully comes along with that fishery. And so you do see both male and female. How do you tell them apart if you find one swimming along or find one sucked onto a rock?
Okay, in the breeding season, it's very easy because the females are like a gray brownish color, and the males are like a basketball, so they're bright orange.
Cool.
So in the winter, it's very easy. When they're young and they're all green, like trying to blend in, there's no telling it apart.
Yeah. So the male changes color? Is that correct then?
Yes.
And only for the breeding season?
Yeah, so when breeding season comes around, they'll just change from like this brownish gray, sometimes bluish color, to like this bright orange to attract the females.
Wow. And so there's this bright orange basketball looking after the eggs for a couple of weeks. Does the female then go and lay another set of eggs with another male, or does she head back out to that deeper water?
I've never heard like a female getting a second nest, but I've seen like some breed, and then the female just instantly dips to the deep.
Yeah.
So I don't think there are any accounts of people seeing them make a second nest. Also, it's very hard to like check this because we don't know if it's the same lumpsucker or anything, and we're only in the water for an hour. So I wouldn't say we know, but mostly I've seen the females just dip into the deeper waters.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to have a look and see, like, even if she came back to the same spot each year to spawn would be another cool question. Where do they go when they finish laying their eggs and they head back to the deep? Where do they go and what are they kind of doing out there?
Right. So these lumpsuckers, they come to the surface to breed, and when they're done with that, they'll just dip to the deeper waters here in the North Sea.
How deep are they going? Like, what's their depth?
Well, in the North Sea, they don't have a lot of options. Like 60 meters is really like it's very deep in the North Sea. But I know they'll travel up to the Arctic waters where they can go up to like 100 meters, maybe even more. So that's why we don't even see them like breeding in the summer or anything, or like we don't see any big ones in the summer because they'll just dip into like 100, 120, maybe even more.
Yeah.
And they'll just live on anything they can find there. They'll just...
Yeah, because I mean, that's the lumpsucker up where you're based in the Netherlands. There's others that go down to like over 1 kilometer deep on the continental shelf, aren't there?
Yeah, I've heard of a few species that actually do that. I'm not sure how shallow they go when they're breeding. I have to look into the species.
Yeah.
But it's very amazing that like these lumpsuckers just come up to the surface where the pressure is like a gazillion times less than in the depths. So it's crazy what some of these creatures do.
And I think the thing that makes them even more crazy they do this is that they're actually a pretty bad swimmer, aren't they?
They're very bad swimmers for a fish. Lumpsuckers are very round. A lot of the times you see with fish like this torpedo shape or like this rocket shape. And this means that they can displace a lot of water very easily, and they're very streamlined. So
hydrodynamic and stuff.
And these lumpsuckers are balls, and they just have like a lot of currents. They just cannot resist it because they cannot get all of the water out of their face, and they'll just run into loads of friction, everything. So actually, what the lumpsuckers like to do is just hop around. So they'll use their suction cup on a rock, and then replenish their energy, and then get off the rock, swim a few meters, suck onto another rock. It's very weird to see, but it's also very cool.
Yeah. So I wonder if when they come from the deep, they use like the currents or the tides to their advantage to move around. Because I mean, it would be a massive migration for a fish that like rock hops to like rock hop from the Arctic across the North Sea.
I don't know. I don't think it's researched. I wouldn't know. Like maybe it is.
I did a little bit of research and reading, and I couldn't really find too much info on like their migration, which is, someone needs to get out there and put some little tags on them and stuff, like, and track where they go. It is a lot harder than it sounds, but it would be a cool project.
Yeah, it would be cool.
I do know that. Have you heard they don't have a swim bladder?
Yes.
Yeah, and so that means that they just kind of like have a real hard time staying buoyant in the water column, and I think they have like a jelly beneath their skin, don't they, that helps them with that.
You can see it when you're swimming with them. You'll never see them like some other fish just neutrally buoyant, chilling, not moving. You see them always struggling to get up and like swimming against currents and trying to find their way. So yeah, they're for a fish, they're very bad at swimming.
Yeah. And so, what do lumpsuckers eat? And what would the day of a lumpsucker life look like?
A lot of the times when they're breeding, we have loads of these tiny comb jellyfish in the Netherlands, like hundreds and thousands. So when one of them just flies by with the currents, they'll just head out like a half a meter or something and eat a few jellyfish, come back to the nest. Most of the creatures in the depths, I wouldn't exactly know what they eat there. I guess they also eat jellyfish, and like I've seen them eat crustaceans, like tiny crabs, but they don't really fight. So if it doesn't like get swallowed in one bite, it probably won't eat it. But I've seen them like eat crustaceans, tiny fish, jellyfish, everything they can feast upon.
Yeah, I mean, because they're carnivores, and I think they catch anything. Especially like I've heard worms, like polychaete worms, are one of their favorites. So I guess they just wait until it swims past, and then one foul swoop. Kind of like I guess all scorpion fish are like that in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, fair enough. But it's very weird for a scorpion fish, because I've seen like the scorpion fish just chilling on reefs and like eating something that flies by. But these guys actually, I wouldn't say they go hunting because they're not like actively searching for food loads of the time. But they actually swim around a lot and hop around a lot, and they'll pick up anything they can get along the way.
And because I think I was reading too that like most lumpsuckers are benthic, so they live and spend a lot of their time on the seafloor. But there's also a few species I think that are like pelagic, so like more in the open ocean, and they feed almost exclusively on jellyfish. Have you heard about them?
I have heard about them. I don't know if there's a lot of research about them because I know we don't have them in the Netherlands. But yeah, it's very weird because I still want to like see all the research about these guys because how can a fish that's very bad at swimming be in the north where there's a lot of currents and just swim around eating jellyfish?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, sunfish are quite similar. They'll like just they're almost classified as plankton sometimes in that they'll drift along with the currents, even though they're huge. I just wonder, like, when they're out there drifting along, how they don't get eaten. That's the big, like, kind of question of, for me.
Right, yeah. For like the species here, if they're out in the water and there's like, for example, a seal, they'll just destroy lumpsuckers anytime because they can't swim away. So I think that's also a lot of the times why they live on the bottom.
So seals are one of their main predators, or?
Yeah, like any big mammal, like sometimes dolphins, but they're not really common. Yeah, just their size. When they're young, they'll just get eaten by like sea bass or something. That can happen. But when they reach like the 30, 40 centimeter mark, they only get eaten by seals and maybe if there's a big shark, but that's also not very common in the Netherlands. We have a few species. Most of them won't eat them because, well, the sharks they're just too small, and the ones that can eat them are just they're not common at all.
They're probably not foragers in that kind of rocky environment either, I'd imagine.
No, not really. Like you have some pool rays and like for example the sharks and the sea bass, but it's you don't see them often. So I imagine these lumpsuckers, like for 99% of ocean life in the Netherlands, they're just too big.
Yeah, and speaking of that kind of thing, do we know why they turn orange?
Well, why they turn orange is for the breeding, but just to attract females. How? I'm not sure yet. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like they would be like this bright orange protein ball snack. You know what I mean? Like it feels like you spend your whole life brown colored hiding amongst the rocks, and then you turn orange. It would be, it'd be really cool to know a little bit more. Maybe I'll have to do some journal digging and put some notes at the end of the show.
Yeah, true. Because I'm especially interested, like in the shallows, it's not that interesting because there are not a lot of predators. But I wonder, like in the depths, and like for some of the species in Canada, for example, the Pacific spiny lobsucker, these guys get like 3 centimeters. So I wonder how they fend for themselves, guys. They're just like the one we have in the Netherlands. They're very bad swimmers, and the only thing they have is like tubercles, just like armor and camouflage, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So especially in the depths, I wonder, like for some of these bigger shark species, maybe, or like these big predators, how they actually survive that.
I'm gonna like pause for a second and have a real quick look because I'm sure there must be something on Google Scholar about lumpsuckers. All right, well, so we've just had a little break, which is kind of weird for the Seacreatures podcast, to have a look and see if we can find more detail on how they turn orange and why they turn orange. And after looking, we still don't have an answer, and it looks like it might be a genuine mystery. So this is going to be the first time I put out a call to listeners to email in and get in touch. Instagram's a great way, Seacreatures_podcast, and tell us if you know why lumpsuckers turn orange, or how they turn orange, or why they turn orange. Anyway, before we move to the end of the show, tell us, how do you go find a lumpsucker? And if anyone is wanting to look for a lumpsucker, especially in the Netherlands and the North Sea, how would they go about it, or where should they go?
So when these lumpsuckers come to the surface to breed, they'll be like for nests anywhere between like 5 and 1 meter. So if you want to find them, don't go to like 20, 30. If you're lucky, you'll see one like cruising by to go to the surface, but you won't find a nest or anything. Get ready to have a dry suit or some extra layers of your wetsuit because it's like 4 degrees.
So middle of winter in the shallows, and like, is it like a rocky kind of reef or a seagrass bed, or what would be the best way? What would be the best place?
So it's very rocky with a lot of oysters. So what I do normally is I go to these dive sites where there are a lot of pillars because for some reason they like to get their nests on pillars.
Like kind of like a pier or a jetty or something.
Yeah, or like some agricultural thing. Sometimes you'll find them, for example, on the mussel agriculture. Try to move in an S motion around the reef because they blend very well. Or if you want to play it the easy way, you'll just go to a salmon farm.
Because, I mean, before we kind of finish, one of my cool facts was going to be that they're used in salmon aquaculture. Is that true?
Yeah, true. So some of the smaller species are actually used in salmon agriculture. What happens loads of the time is these salmon, they'll just get very sick in these open water basins and the parasites off of the salmon. So that's when some researchers had the genius idea to take lumpsuckers, especially the Pacific spiny one, because it's very small and it eats a lot. I've seen like one of these 2.5 centimeter, 3 centimeters creatures just eat like, I don't know, 30, 35 parasites a day. So it's ridiculous, and it's a very big step to like commercially farm these salmon without any environmental impact. So it's very cool.
Wow. And talk us through exactly like what it would kind of be like. So we've got a salmon swimming along and it has a parasite, I presume kind of like a little isopod, little bug that's sitting on it. Is that kind of what the lumpsuckers are eating?
Most of them are like, they're called sea lice. So they just like stick between the scales, and like sometimes they're gill plates. And these lumpsuckers, they'll be in one of these like very big nets on the open ocean. I've even seen them like stick onto a salmon, although it's not very common. But they'll just swim around, and because there are no predators, they'll just go up to a salmon, eat the sea lice. So you have just these like a load of lumpsuckers in these huge nets, just cruising around, eating parasites off of every salmon they can find. When the salmon turns out to be sick, or when it has a lot of parasites, you won't be able to eat it. So yeah, it's a very big step forward.
Yeah, I wonder if that kind of behavior occurs a lot in the wild.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I know there are some... It happens sometimes, like in Canada, for example. I've heard of a couple of people saying like they've seen like these spiny lumpsuckers just taking one parasite off of doesn't really matter which fish cruises by. Or I wonder if they sometimes just stay around the school of, I don't know, mullets or anything, cruising around with them, taking parasites off of them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would kind of be like how you have manta ray and shark, like big animal cleaning stations in the tropics. It's almost like a kind of more northern cold water, temperate water cleaning fish.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very weird. I wonder.
Yeah, crazy. And do you have any more or any other cool facts about lumpsuckers before we kind of wrap up?
I don't think so. I think it's we have to do more research.
Yeah, I know. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode. Because, I mean, we've talked about some cool stuff like they have jelly beneath their skin, no swim bladder, they help salmon out, they turn orange, but I feel like we don't know how or why. So stay tuned for the next time we talk about lumpsuckers, where hopefully we'll have a little bit more info. But before we go, if anyone wants to kind of see, because you do a bit of underwater photography as well, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, chat lumpsucker, or see some of your underwater photography, or go for a dive in the Netherlands, what should they do and where should they go?
So I have an Instagram page. It's Dutch, so it's maybe a little bit it's a bit weird, but it's called Een Dier of Zo.
How do you spell it?
EENDIEROFZO. And you can find my photography there. You can send me a message or anything. I'll try to do my best.
Yeah, because I feel like people should be going to the Netherlands for a dive to see these creatures. It's a pretty... Yeah, who needs to see whales and like orcas?
No one cares about orcas when you can find a lumpsucker.
Exactly. Cool. Well, thanks very much for being on the show. It's been awesome.
Thanks a lot. I love it.
Seacreatures Podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by myself, Matt Testoni. If you've liked the show, jump onto our Buy Me a Coffee page, which is buymeacoffee.com/Matt Testoni, to help with the running costs of the show. Production assistance by George McGrath, and music by the awesome and talented Dan Musil. Be sure to check out some of his cool tunes. Also, if you want to help Sea Creatures out, make sure you tell people about us, so that we can spread knowledge of the ocean and love of the ocean even further. Coming up next time on the Sea Creatures Podcast, we're going to be talking all about the ruby sea dragon. This has been the Sea Creatures Podcast. Over and out.